Okay, hi everyone. We're going to be looking at something a little bit different today. We're going to be taking a look at my 3D printer, the Creality CR10. I've had this now for a little over a year, I think. I'm not exactly sure. When I first got it, I was quite pleased with it because it was considerably better quality than the one I had before. It's a larger printer and it had a larger print bed, but just generally the prints came off much better. Had it a while now, and it probably is starting to deteriorate a little bit. I'm not sure if that's maybe the belt's getting worn or maybe the bed is a bit warped. We'll talk about that in a minute. But when I first got it, I did a little bit of reading up about these, and I saw several people were doing a few modifications. There were a few criticisms, and a few people were making some mods to them. I didn't want to do that at the time when it was brand new. I didn't want to mess with a brand new printer, but I did look into them a little bit, so it gave me some ideas. The thing I'm going to be looking at today is the bed leveling. So to level the bed, you have these 4 thumb screws underneath the bed. You can see one here. So to move the bed up and down, you just turn this screw, and there's one under each corner. We can see another one over here, and there's 2 at the back. Now, the one thing I don't like about these is that these are difficult to turn, particularly the ones in the back where it's difficult to get your hand underneath to get a good grip on them, and one of them is particularly tight, so they are a bit tricky to adjust. So one of the suggestions to make these a little easier to adjust was to 3D print some larger thumb screws and replace these small ones. So that's what I've done. I've downloaded these. I downloaded the STL file from Thingiverse, and I've printed off 4 of these. The first one I printed warped a little bit, so I added a brim to help with the bed adhesion a little bit, and printed 4 out. I would have preferred them to be in black, but I actually got grey loaded into the printer and I couldn't be bothered to change it. My black filament is a little old, and it may have been affected by moisture, so I didn't want to risk it. I thought I'd just go with this stuff I've got currently loaded in, which was grey. So I've cleaned them up. I just filed off the brim, and then I gave them a little rub down with some 400 grit sandpaper just on the bottom edge where the brim was. Incidentally, if you want to download these yourself, I've put a link in the description so you can download them from Thingiverse. I'll just share a couple of little features that I do like on these. You got these little arrows on here, and I'm always confused when I'm turning the knobs. Am I raising or lowering the bed? And what these arrows will help me with is I'll know that if I'm turning it in this direction, I'm actually raising the bed, and if I turn it the opposite direction, then I'm obviously lowering the bed because I'm going the opposite way of the arrow. So this direction to raise and this direction to lower. And then the other feature I like is these numbers that you've got on here, just to know how much you're actually moving it. I think they just go from 0 presumably to 360 degrees. I'm not sure. Well, I guess they're 45 degree steps. Is that right? 315 plus 45? Sounds about right. Never do maths on the camera. So what we need to do is to fit some nuts into the bottom of these. I've got my little trusty kit here. This is the 330 piece nut washer and screw set. Yeah, no idea where I got that from. So I've got a selection of screws in here. I think they're M2, M3 and M4. Wasn't really sure what size these are, but they look like they're M4. I did give them a try, and the nut seems a little loose in there, which I'm slightly disappointed about. I would have preferred a nice snug fit, but I think that's going to work. I've also tried the nut on the thread on the printer, and that seems fine. So I think the next step is to dive in and get them fitted. So what I've done, I've pulled the bed right forward, so that'll just make it a little easier to get under here and get this first one off. Yeah, so initially they feel a little bit loose, but I think once you start to tighten the bed down, it does feel secure now. They are really easy to turn. You can see I can just turn them with one finger. So I guess they are easier than these little small knobs that we've taken off. And as you can see, they were simple enough to fit. I'll get the next one on. Yeah, I definitely would have preferred them to have been in black. So simple enough to fit, you don't need any tools. We'll definitely need to re-level the bed after messing around with these. So I'll get the back two on. I don't think I'll be able to get the camera in very well at the back, so I'll do that off camera. Okay, so they're on. I've switched the printer on, so it's a little noisier than before. As you can see, they're here and they're nice and easy to adjust. The ones that were awkward before were the ones at the back, and I can now quite easily adjust those. They're nice and easy to turn. I think one thing you just need to be careful of once you've replaced these, if you are doing the same upgrade, is that we have to bear in mind that our bed is probably now a long way out of calibration. So when we bring the hot end down, you can just see under there, when we bring that down to the bed, I don't know if we set it at 0.1 millimeters probably, we just have to be careful that we don't actually crash right into the bed, because the bed could be quite a way out of position. So I did an auto home on the control panel, and it just brought the hot end down onto the bed. It did push the bed down a little bit when it came down. I'm sorry I didn't show you that as I was doing it. And then what I did is I just backed off these screws, so I turned them against the arrow. So I just turned them this way, and that lowers the bed because we're turning the arrows backwards. So we're going down rather than up, which is where the arrows are pointing. So we've now got quite a large gap under the between the hot end and the bed. And then what I just do is use a little bit of paper. It's obviously going to be really loose right now, but I put a little bit of paper under there and just feel how much friction we've got on the paper, and then adjust the knob until we just get a tiny little bit of friction on the paper. So I've adjusted the knob, and you can see I can move the paper, but there's a little bit of friction in there, a little bit of drag. So what I'll do now is I'll move the hot end over to the other side. so we'll bring it over to this side and we'll do this corner. So that process actually takes me a little while. You have to remember that as you adjust one corner, you're actually affecting the other three, I guess. I mean, the opposite corner is probably being affected the least. If I'm adjusting this one's probably being affected the least. But as I raise this corner, I am slightly raising this corner, and I'm also slightly raising this corner. So you have to kind of keep going around, keep adjusting each one, because when you adjust one, it affects the others. So I've got all four corners feeling quite nice now, but I've moved it into the centre, and the centre's a little tighter than the four corners, so I think that indicates the bed is slightly bowed upwards. If it had been a bit loose in the middle, then the bed would be dishing down a bit. It's tight, so the bed must be just sort of bowed upwards, just a tiny amount. Now we should really do this bed levelling with the hot end up to temperature, because the metal in the hot end can expand, and that could push us a little bit closer to the bed. Also, same goes for the bed. Once the bed is hot, that could expand. So once we're up to temperature, everything could be a little bit tighter. So what I'll do is I'll now bring things up to their normal operating temperatures. I'm going to set the bed at 60 degrees C, and I'm going to set the hot end at 180 degrees C. So with it up to temperature, I can't get my paper under that. So that has expanded a bit, so we will need to lower the bed slightly. So we should be able to just turn the wheel this way. Just lower the bed a little bit. There, it now fits under. So you can see it is important to do that when the hot end is up to temperature. I'll have to adjust all four again. So I've again adjusted all four corners with it up to temperature. The four corners are feeling nice, but again I've moved it to the middle, and it's very tight in the middle, so I think this glass is bowed. So one solution for that is to take the glass off and flip it over, so I'll do that. So that actually feels better after turning the glass over. The corners were actually a little bit loose. The centre felt almost perfect, and the corners were a little bit loose, so I did raise the corners a little bit, and I'm now fairly happy with all of it. All four corners and the centre feel like there's just a tiny bit of friction when I'm running the paper underneath. So I think what I'll do now is I'll do a small print. I've got some flat parts that I want to print. It will be a good test for how level the bed is. It's probably a little difficult to make that out there. It looks like it's going down fairly neatly to me. This will be quite interesting to see how these go down. So there we have it, a small upgrade to the CR10. quite a simple upgrade, easy to do. We didn't need any tools. It was easy enough to fit them. So I hope you found that of some interest. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.